Hi everybody, I'm Lennert, this is Rauf. We're building Airweave. Airweave is an open source dev tool that you can use to essentially turn any third-party application, or any source for that matter, databases or APIs are fine too, into long-term memory for your AI agent or AI application. We do that by making these contents searchable for agents. And so this started as something that we were building for our own agent company to solve this data retrievability issue that we were facing. And we were kind of frustrated with the tooling or lack thereof and started building this as an internal solution, and that birthed Airweave. One of the major challenges that we faced and are facing, of course, is how do you maximize integration coverage in a scalable way. And to walk you through, like in a hands-on way, how we dealt with that, we're gonna, Rauf is gonna build an integration live, and we're gonna pause and talk about some of the, which challenges led to certain decisions into how we're building that right now. And then we're gonna show after that a more complicated one. Similarly. So if you have questions, feel free to ask anything in between, and or do you want to pause on the architecture?
No, I think we can revisit this later.
Yeah, cool. So any Studio Ghibli fans over here? Yeah, at least one, okay. So what we're going to be doing right now is, like I said, a very simple source connector. So just to reiterate for your own understanding, Airweave transports data from sources, usually third-party applications, to destinations. You could say vector databases, graph databases, and usually combinations thereof. So right now we're going to be building a relatively simple source connector for this open REST API that you can find for the Studio Ghibli movies. Why it's a little bit simpler is because you don't have to authenticate anything. You don't have to authenticate the connection, so it's a bit more straightforward. So the way you would build it is we have these decorators that you can decorate the source class with.
So you zoom in a bit
more?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Is it readable now?
No.
You wanted to zoom in? You want us to zoom in a bit more? You can't see it.
There is one letter.
Yeah, exactly. So what you would decorate it with is just the way you want to name this, like the full name and the short name. That's what you see in the source decorator that Rauf just imported. The create method is the constructor that we would use. So this is fairly simple. Again, it's just returning the class itself. If we would be building an authenticated connector, then this is where you would be doing all the token handling, or all of it. That's something that's that comes with Airweave out of the box, but that's where you would pass it through. To speed things up a little bit, we're going to be using Cursor to get the schema, get the module out quicker. This is of course going to be based on previous modules that we built, because we didn't want to take up too much time in the demo. So what you're seeing right now, what Rauf is writing is, so this connector is split up into two major components. First of all, the entity schemas, that's where we wrap the API object models that we deem important for this connector into our custom pydantic schemas. And then there's the source connector, and this is the actual class that'll traverse the API structure and then generate these entity chunks. And in this case, the entity generation is a fairly simple process. It just pulls all the objects and then generates these chunks. Let's say you'd be using a more, let's say, nested application like Asana. What it would do, it would walk through every project, or every workspace, then every project, every board, every list, every ticket, and then not only store the actual information, so let's say the text in the ticket, but also the entity relationship between all the objects that you follow to get to that specific piece of information. Exactly.
Yeah.
And want to add anything to that?
No. Yeah. So just as an extra explanation, so what we've done now is we've wrapped this base entity. These are sort of the minimalist chunks, like Lennert mentioned before, and just very simply, we are generating these entities, and from this point on, the whole framework takes this over and writes this to the vector database, right?
Yeah.
Now that I've done this, what you will see, it's very hard to move around. One thing that's not immediately clear, but one thing that we implemented internally is sort of an introspection module that helps us use these decorators as sort of markings in our code base to actually come and pull out these sources that we created. So what happened now is a sync happened, the script ran that introspectively analyzed all of these decorators, and if we go to our application now, we promised Tomás not to show too much of the application and stick on code, it's just going to be a small screen. I already sneaked in this little Studio Ghibli icon here, and you can see that this card was created because we actually created that bit of code that points to this implementation. If we choose the source.
Yeah, and just to emphasize, so if you can use Airweave using our Python or TypeScript SDKs, or just use the API directly, or via this web UI. And if you'd be using our, yeah?
You mentioned SDK, but it seems more like kind of duck that. Like you need to class certain decorators, and nothing is preventing you from building it without the SDK.
Excuse me?
So like you're basically saying that your class needs to have these kind of methods and these decorators.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I don't need to be for the SDK.
Well, there's kind of a few facets to this. So one, you actually need the decorator.
Yeah.
So the decorator comes from our internal model, right?
Yeah.
So this is kind of how we try to do this open source enablement of exposing these types. We're still working on the developer interface for this part. And then what you see now is the user interface, but all of the stuff that is going on here, that you can actually talk to with the SDK or the REST APIs as well. I'll show that in a little bit.
Yeah, so all the synchronization logic, all of that is what you would be accessing or triggering using the SDK.
You put something in the chat that generated your identity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that an open API spec or what's going in?
Yeah, so I kind of raw dogged it, where I just put in the whole JSON. I think there's like 21 Studio Ghibli movies, so it's a pretty large JSON, but it has an end.
Right, I was thinking like if this is an open API spec, you can like generate almost everything.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. So one of the ways we actually see Airweave getting to a large coverage, sorry Thomas, this is a bit of a business lingo, but the way we think we can actually get to large coverage count of these integrations is actually by using development agents to put in, for example, open API specifications, along with extra prompting and access
And
to
the documentation, exactly.
to generate these classes at a very high speed to effectively write this boilerplate for us, right?
Yeah, with testing.
Yeah.
So basically the process that you just did, it would be automated at a very high scale.
Yeah.
That's what we are trying to.
That's what we're working on right now.
Yeah. So we wanted to show you like a very elementary example of what's actually going on. We expect that as an open source project, we'll be able to cover the most important APIs, and then also be extensible through maybe some cursor rules for people to onboard their own APIs into the platform as well.
So yeah, what you saw just now is, or what happened in the background is this synchronization process. So then what happens is all these specific entities get pulled and get transported to, in this case, the native Weaviate instance that we're hosting. You could also use your own VectorDB or GraphDB of choice. And then we track, we hash the specific chunks of information for tracking updates and inserts and whatnot. And a cool thing you can do in the UI is like a sanity check whether the data is, whether the synchronization, the mapping made sense. We have a small chat UI that you can ask questions like these and kind of chat with the data you just synchronized. So, like we said, that was a pretty simple case, like a very clear-cut API model structure. But what do you do when the objects don't have a fixed structure? For instance, if you're trying to connect a SQL database, you don't know beforehand which types of fields you're going to have. So to deal with that, we came up with using this polymorphic entity generation, where in a metaprogramming-ish way, we pull the specific, in this case, the specific tables, and then generate the attributes based on the fields that we see in that SQL table.
Yeah, so this is kind of the way we see this types of frameworks going forward. If we really want this platform to be plug and play, we actually need to do the sort of runtime inference of what's actually the data type that we are dealing with. So Postgres obviously has this nature because it's tables and you don't know what the table might have. Salesforce, ServiceNow,
Monday,
SAP, Monday, Notion, those types of CRUD apps or whatever you may call them, you don't know beforehand what it might look like, but still you want to have a capacity of moving all of that information in a semi-structured way into the long-term memory of your agent. So this is one of the things we think that Airweave could make a difference for agent developers going forward.
Yeah.
Maybe we can show a bit about
I actually
architecture.
understand that. Like, how does it work with these unstructured tables, like the SQL database?
So SQL databases are by definition structured, right? So it's tabular data.
Yeah.
They have named columns.
I think I used the incorrect word, not unstructured, but you don't know the structure beforehand. That was the
Yeah. You don't know
exactly.
which attributes you're going to have beforehand, exactly.
Yeah. So how does it navigate them if it doesn't know?
So it at runtime it queries the entity relations of these tables, right? So it's a bunch of SQL tables. They point at each other. Similar structure you might find in Salesforce, where the custom CRM has different entities that point at each other in a certain way, all custom per environment. And what it does is it actually looks at that, and then based on that generates these schemas on the fly. So just like we defined this Ghibli film, which obviously was a very dumbed down, easy example, you can actually do this on the fly as well for these tables. And then also keep those relations going forward so that your agent can function on it.
Yeah.
PySpark has a lot, right? You can give a schema and that's nice.
Yeah, exactly.
You say, you want I don't give that schema and inverse it, and then it breaks it to 2045 row because it's a none that you can expect. Like, how far do you want to go to have a typeset ingress so that you know that downstream there's no problem? Like, that's quite that's a tightrope, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's part of the reason we are open source and we like this extensibility idea. We're like, I think that the raison d'être of a platform, like its reason to exist, is it takes away 95 of your problems out of 100, and the other 5 you can actually customize so that you can fix this. Right? Like, there's nothing preventing users of the platform of writing their own schemas and pulling out the data of the databases, but we expect like an average CRUD app database should actually be able to be within space.
So another question? Oh, what? A lot. I'll start in the back. Oh, there's more. You got a question, right? Or
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you deal with relationships, especially when they are not defined, or maybe you talk about NoSQL?
How do you deal with relationships that are not defined, especially you talk about NoSQL databases that if you go from a connection to another, you know how you detect them?
For NoSQL databases, currently we don't have an off-the-shelf system. If you have a suggestion, that does sound interesting, actually.
yeah, maybe the Trello connector is Trello schema is nice to show for Like, so when there is an explicit relationship, entity relationship in the application, that's something that we also just map in our pedantic model. But when it isn't there, like Rauf said, we don't support that yet, but if you have suggestions, feel free.
From the database of the database, I guess.
You read from the definition schema of powers or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you know, again with this, it's like detection of those relationships fully polymorphically. That might be pretty hard, but we don't restrict our users of actually finding those relations themselves and loading that data in that way. Right?
But if you have ideas, I'd love to talk afterwards. Yeah. I'm sorry, his hand was. You have the mic already. I don't care.
So, as I understand this, you're essentially cloning data sources into a different data store so that it is more readily available for an AI agent to query, right? So, you know, in terms of use cases, a lot of databases the value of them is that they are fresh, right? They have fresh data. They know what the state of the data is. Like, if I'm talking to an agent and I want to know the status of my order that changed 2 minutes ago from whatever, delivered to not delivered, then I want to have a fresh set of information. So, and also databases can be really huge, right? We have these big database servers for a reason. So, in what way, when does it make sense to clone all this information, except if it's scraping web pages? Of course, that is a slow process, but if you're dealing with high performance, high refresh information, why not just talk to the database directly?
So you can. So first of all, it's not a one-shot clone. You can synchronize it in a scheduled way, and so first of all, you can just bring down you can bring up the frequency of how often you want to synchronize it. We are also going to move towards like event-based synchronization. So whenever a change occurs in a certain source, and
but like why would I want that thing in the middle when I can talk to the database directly and get new information into my AI? What is the holding power of why does it exist?
So the whole reason that vector databases and accompanying knowledge graphs exist is so that AI agents can easily grasp the context, at least to have a starting point of where they want to search for information, right? Usually what we see is this can be the sort of final destination for these things. You could imagine that you find some context in the vector database, then based on that you formulate what you're going to look for inside the actual source. And you know, if it's up to date, then actually what we see with the current users, that's pretty much all they need at the moment.
And why you would use something like that in the middle is because, or why you would use a service like this, at least that's what we're seeing with the first couple of customers, is building and managing a service like this, especially for the smaller companies that we're working with. It's not, so it's crucial for their functioning, but it's not their distinguishing competency to build and manage this. So it makes sense to outsource this to a specific service like ours that's specialized in doing that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think an even better answer to the question is that, as far as I know, the agents who work.
Maybe an even better answer to the question is that the agents I've heard of are not able to search through all these apps efficiently. That's the answer to this question, right?
That's one of them, yeah. Also,
sure.
yeah. Because we also, actually that's what Rauf mentioned, that the whole reason for existence for these parallel vector and graph databases or these knowledge bases is to make that obscure and hard to retrieve data on third-party applications retrievable or accessible for agents. So yeah. Questions?
Yeah. So follow up to these two questions is so a big advantage of this would be that you can also stitch together a pipeline of agents that talk to each other, and it's not something that would be possible with like a direct connection to the database, right?
Mm-hmm. Or at least I don't know if I fully understand your question.
Not necessarily. So that's not what we
That's not your aim.
No, that's not our problem. So what Airweave is really good at is aggregating this information in a form where, context retrieval, kind of the whole fundamental of how you do RAG, how you filter on results on RAG. That's sort of where we currently stop as a framework. How you then use that for multi-agent collaboration, that's kind of open-ended, but it's not something that we necessarily offer.
Yeah, the core service really comes down to serving the information in the optimal place for retrieval for downstream agentic use cases, and if that would be some multi-agent collaboration, then that's up to the developer. We just make it as easy as possible to find that information on, let's say, your Salesforce or Trello or whatever.
Okay. So in that case, like the problem is keeping it synchronized,
Keeping synchronized, managing user credentials, that's also something that comes out of the box with Airweave. So it's also fully tailored. I don't want to make this a pitch too much, but that's like one of the reasons you would use it, because we automate all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Last question. So you spoke about the ingest, right? The pipeline. What about if you want to connect customized outputs or syncs? Right, so you talked about the top end of it, but what about the syncs? Can you write a custom sync into your own knowledge base or whatever?
Yeah. So, you want to go?
Yeah, I don't think I understand the question.
So you mean, to what extent?
So like you show that you take the data in and you stuff it into Aviator, the vector store that you have. But what if I want to push it somewhere else? Like I have my own RAG pipeline. I want to create maybe different types of vectors. I want to do some other things.
Then so we offer essentially 4 types of connectors that you can extend. One is the source, the one that we just showed you. I would say that's the simplest one. Destinations is one. A third one is embedding models. You might have a very specific way of embedding stuff. If you're in a very specific jargon of a specific field of expertise, embedding models, or you want to do image embedding alongside, then we offer that open-endedness. And then the fourth one that we're actually working on is transformer nodes that you can actually write and then put inside of your...
Yes, so for example, if you want to deduplicate or things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's all these entities that are being created, but you might have, let's say you are integrating for multiple sources that all have email, but there's only one type of email type that you are actually willing to track for whatever reason on your destination, right? Then we offer ways of, so this is still in development, but we offer ways to essentially click on this plus icon and add your transformer so that you finally put it in a way that is as palatable as possible for your agent to consume that information. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cormick. I work for orq.ai, and that's a GenAI ops platform based here in Amsterdam. We're basically a lifecycle management or end-to-end platform where you can test, evaluate, ship everything into production. But today I really want to focus on how to evaluate LLMs, because as funny as this might be, if you're really building anything that you're exposing to your end users, you want to properly evaluate it, similar to how you might test for traditional software engineering. Some of you might already have seen this. So Chevrolet had a chatbot, but they actually were legally obliged to sell this particular car to a buyer for $1 because of prompt hijacking. So many of you know the great things about LLMs, so I don't have to go into that, but they are still non-deterministic, which makes it also very crucial to evaluate them. I already touched upon prompt hijaction, but also one of our customers is doing stuff in the educational space, or first things students or kids basically do is always like, can I make it say racial stuff, or tell me why Hitler was a good guy, like all that stuff, which you don't want to happen. Then there are also some other things that you might take into consideration, such as cost. Do you really need the most expensive model for all your use cases? Stuff like latency. If you're building like consumer-facing apps, like your end user doesn't want to wait 5 seconds constantly. So that is a good one to take into account. Also tone of voice. Does really speak to like, yeah, your tone that you're setting up. And for the people, especially the agent builders, the tool consistency is super important. Like having your LLM decide which tool to call at the right time, at the right moment is very crucial. And also, does it actually use your tool in its output, or does it respond with, sure, here's your JSON, which you then have to filter out for. So, I'm gonna go into orq now. This is a new feature that we have been building. Let me start off here. This is a data set, which consists of a question and a human curated answer. And what I'm basically trying to achieve here is running through all these input fields to see, and this could be thousands of rows, to see across historical data if, for example, like a new model or a different prompt created a better output. And this human curated answer can be very helpful to use certain evaluators. See, there's a question. Excuse me. It doesn't seem to work, but doesn't really matter as long as you understand that there are different fields with inputs that can be, in my use case, questions from users and a reference that you are checking against. This use case, by the way, is American Airlines, an FAQ bot that uses a knowledge base, which is basically a vector database with its chunks, full with FAQs. We're using a tool, which is this. Is this? Can everyone see this, by the way? No. Okay.
Just zoom in.
Yeah, I can zoom in this. Yeah. And I am using a knowledge base, like I said. I imported my data set, which is now here in the inputs. Basically all the questions, so is there a price reduction if I pay for my checked package online? And then the expected output is something like, well, first it should respond with the question, which I then map the answer actually to the end user. Now, I did set up 4 response columns, so I'm currently using Claude 3.5 Haiku, and this is my prompt. But I've designed a new prompt, which I want to see if that is actually better, which is this prompt. Like I use some tags here, and it's a little bit more extensive, but like before just like pushing it live, I want to evaluate if that is correct. Now, I've also heard great things about GPT-4o Mini, which I'm also comparing like my old prompt and my new prompt against. Now, I could simply run this and then see all the outputs side by side, but I don't want to do that because I might be lazy, or you have other things to do. So therefore, I want to use evaluators. And because I'm using a tool, I'm using a JSON schema validator. So if it is actually using all the fields that I set up as required, or if it doesn't start with, like I said in the beginning, sure, here's my JSON, and then 3 backticks and the rest of the answer. Also, I set up an LLM as a judge, and for the people that are unfamiliar with that sort of concept, is basically a language model that checks the output of another language model. And in this case, if it is responding with the tone of voice that I specified here according to the American Airlines concepts. Then I'm also using cosine similarity, and we support a bunch of like other traditional algorithmic evaluators or coming from machine learning that basically check if the expected output, which you saw in my data set, how similar the vector representation is to my newly generated output. And then there's a score between 1, which is like exactly similar, to 0, which is like, the complete opposite. This also encaptures sort of the meaning, so you don't match if there is a similarity word for word, but if there is like the meaning, if that is similar or not. Now, since this is a RAG use case, retrieval augmented generation, we could also leverage RAG-as evaluators that check like if the retrieved chunks from the knowledge base are relevant or not. But just for demonstration purposes, I will run this experiment now. We see that everything is queued, and then shortly after, all of the models will start running, 10 at a time, so we don't hit into rate limits. And you can see here that they already start showing up. And yeah, you can do the math, like if you're running an experiment with 1,000 rows, this will take a little while, but this is way more granular than checking everything one by one, or as was previously mentioned, like just vibe checking. Oh yeah, it looks good, I've tested it a few times, let's push it to production.
It would be nice to have a CO2 counter too.
It is initiating a lot of requests at once, since like the rows, like now I have just 19, but I go like multiplied against the number of models, and then also multiplied against like each evaluator. So yeah, there are a lot of LLM calls being orchestrated in the backend.
Do you run it on your API keys or on the customer side?
Yeah, this is my own API keys. Yeah. But you can actually choose. We want to make it as easy as possible for people to experiment with multiple models. Let's say you don't have a Grok API key yet, but you really want to see how fast they really are. You can just use ours.
Okay.
And,
Can I ask a
yeah,
question?
sure.
Can you also can you scroll all the way to the left again, so I understand correctly? Because for some of these instances, it will be nice to, instead of have a single run of like fail pass, for instance, when you're doing like an LLM as a judge, that evaluation, to be able to average over multiple runs for a specific data point. Is that something that's also possible, or do you even have to just copy paste the same row?
Yeah, what you could do is indeed like have multiple of the same rows. But what we tried to do with like these filters at the bottom, it's like, okay, across like all your rows, like what is the average, or like what is the pass rate or the fill rate, to be able to sort of answer your question. But now we can see is like after 1 minute and 8 seconds, the experiment is complete. I can zoom into the comparison mode, so I can see like everything side by side, and then also open specific logs. But what I'm mostly interested in is the evaluators. So I can already see that cost is like a huge difference in between like Haiku and GPT-4o Mini. Latency, same thing. Now my schema evaluator seems to be working best with the new prompt. So I can definitely see in terms of like the prompt or the schema, my new prompt is much better to it. and the tone of voice. Like apparently my old prompt using Claude was the best, but then yeah, I want to see like the bottom row has to fill, so let's actually dive into that. Why is that the case? Well, first of all, like here we see it doesn't adhere to the schema, but then I'm sorry, but I can't help you with this question. Yeah, it doesn't seem too negative to me, so I'd rather look at all the edge cases rather than like every output one by one.
Question.
Yeah?
What constitutes a failure in the evaluation of tone of voice?
Yeah, so I prompted a model. In this case, I think it was Gemini 1.5 Flash, because I want to get it done quickly. And I basically prompted it to say like, okay, if the tone of voice is negative, then you should return false. And then we actually map it to fill, so it's visually showing. But because yeah, like I wasn't very specific maybe, it classified this one as a negative tone of voice instead of, yeah, positive.
And about the schema, JSON schema evaluator, what about that? Like, what's the criteria for
I can
pass?
show that. So let me see if I have it here. This is my schema, and if it returns with something like different or it misses the answer field, yeah, then it will return false.
Oh, but it's about the structure of that.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, or if it's not a valid JSON first of all, then it will also return false.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you also, maybe you already said this, but can you also supply custom on Python code as a custom evaluator?
Yeah, very nice question. In the next release, we're actually going to introduce Python evaluators. We have a whole library. Maybe I can quickly show you that. So the Python ones are coming. Oh, now I'm a bit zoomed in, but yeah, a lot of different functions that sort of are in the library that you can quickly copy or modify. And basically, we never want to be the blocker. So if there's any particular evaluator that you want to run, you can always do an API call and yeah, evaluate it on your side.
Do you use any LLMs to judge templates, like a Prometheus or something?
Yeah, so let me just say age appropriateness at the library. Like this is then the template that you can modify. It might be a bit small, but we do provide all the templates.
And also the prompt template of the LLM evaluator is homegrown or grown, is not something that's following, let's say, standard templates that you would see when you use somewhere. Prometheus from, the guys from Arribas, they have like a standard, like one point for this, 2 points for that, 3 points for that.
No. But we have like people taking all the best practices, and perhaps this is one of the ones that we can add to build like good templates that then customers can use. But arguably the most important evaluator is cosine similarity, so really looking at the quality of the output. And then I can see here that, I don't know if that's visible clearly enough, but with the heat map, we already try to visually make it apparent what the differences are. But then really on here, I can see that my new prompt using GPT-4o Mini scores the highest. So now I can confidently sort of ship or merge to a new model and use my new prompt without testing in production. And that's basically it. So thank you for your attention, and if you want to use this yourself, feel free to shoot me a message or an email and connect with me on LinkedIn.
All right, thank you, Cormick. Very interesting and useful. I see there was questions already through the talk, but now if people have more questions, is also a good time. Yeah.
So on those prompt templates, right? Because I've been playing with this AI stuff, and every time I run into what is the exact template that they want me to use, I can't really find out the exact way I'm supposed to do it. Some people have these XML-like or HTML markers. Other ones have other structures that you feed it. In your experience, how sensitive are the AIs to doing that wrong? Because I think everybody's just doing stuff. It's like, oh, it's sort of okay, but how sensitive are the models to doing that wrong?
Depends also on the model, but now finally the model providers are starting to give out sort of the best practices so that people then can incorporate. I must say, like, the more complex your prompt or the longer your prompt, then it becomes more and more important, especially with like agentic stuff, when it really needs to choose between multiple tools at the same time and maybe answer 3 questions that are merged into one question. Yeah, then having like a best practice template is really important.
Right, because you also have like the system prompt often, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's always very fuzzy. Like, what should I put in the system prompt, and what should just go in the normal prompt?
A system prompt, what I always say is like that are your core instructions that the model should always respect, and then the rest is just the particular task that it should do for that particular query, and then it might not be needed for like the follow-up conversation.
All right, over there.
Could you just show what it looks like from the API perspective? How we would actually use this programmatically?
Oh, good one. So I mean, this is just a Postman setup. We have a Python and a Node SDK, and like you would see a similar screen to the experiments module that I showed, where you configure your prompt, your model. We generate a code snippet for you that you can basically use. And then when I'm invoking a particular deployment, this is then what you would get in return. Like, you won't be able to run an experiment, at least of now, through the API. But our deployments module is really where you put stuff in production, and that you sort of use us as a middleware for your whole GenAI abstraction.
Got it. So the reason I'm asking is because, like, having worked in MLOps, one of the main things that we were dealing with was data drift and like model performance drift. So I guess the main approach now would be go back to the UI, move all the new data in, and then run experiments again, and then deploy the new stuff.
Yeah, or we're making like the whole platform headless, so that every module is sort of available through the API. The good thing is, like, every LLM call that goes through us is logged. So you can have add them all to a data set, potentially like the ones that your end users rated as bad, and fine-tune or like prompt engineer based on those like negatively or poorly rated logs to see if there's actually improvement.
Got it. Thanks.
Cool.
One question, right?
So I assume that this also has some form of repeatability in it, right? Another maybe newbie question. Every time I shoot a prompt at an LLM, I get a new answer, right? Which might be wildly different or wildly wrong. So is there some kind of seed parameter that you lock it down to, or how do you deal with that variability?
Yeah, you could use the seed parameter, but because like inherently these models are still not deterministic, you could also, like, now compare it to 2 prompts and 2 models next to each other. You could also do.
You're not deterministic.
What?
You're not deterministic.
Yeah.
Like, if I put the same input in, the same output would come out, right? It's a GPU.
No, like
You
models
can't glitch.
are
Depends
still.
on the temperature, right?
I would like if you it's a computer, like it's not some quantum thing. You plug data in, and the same answer is supposed to come out.
Well, yeah, no, for LLMs that is not the case, but that is what makes them so powerful.
Scheduling sometimes can produce a bit different results, and it accumulates, so you won't get extremely different output, but it can be the same with
What causes that variability?
Kernel scheduling mostly. So your GPU heats up, and then different constraints on operations come in, and at the end you have a bit different results. It's not drastic. It usually is not the case, but it can happen even with the same thing.
Okay, so now
Also
it's
there's
alive.
some-
It's alive then, by that definition. It's quantum entangled with our world.
Well, like it's probabilistic in a way, and yeah, that makes it sometimes answer a little bit differently. But you can control this with the seed parameter and also the temperature. So the temperature of 0 gives you like closest to deterministic answers.
All right. Thank you, Cormick. Yeah, thank you for all the questions. That's what we like the most. AI Tinkerers is usually the back and forth and the questions from the community that makes it the most interesting. So.
Hello, Amsterdam. Maybe first by like show of hands. Who here has built something previously with an open source model? Like not GPT, not Claude, not Gemini? Okay, nice, 7 people. At the previous event it was 4 people, so that's already better. Congratulations.
This is AI Tinkerers after all.
Yeah. Very nice. Maybe the most famous open source model that was recently in the news is DeepSeek, and more specifically DeepSeek R1. A lot of people have the notion that open source models don't really compete with the likes of GPT, Claude, or Anthropic. But I'm here today not to prove you wrong, but to prove you with tools that you can use to discover that yourself. So my name is...
You didn't art it yet?
Hmm?
You didn't art it yet?
No, I didn't. So I work for Featherless AI. We're basically a serverless inference provider for all large language models on Hugging Face, well, all open weight large language models on Hugging Face. Maybe because Cormick just spoke about LLM evals, let's go to this project first, which was actually inspired by this tweet by the big and great Andrej Karpathy. We often have these evaluations like MMLU, where people test these models on, and we get these fancy numbers, and everybody is like, wow, the score increased by 3%, amazing. But what if you would like test this against like actual things that people use? As you see, like with the latest Claude model as well, they've also tested it on like, Pokemon, which is also not a basic research question or something like that. It's more of a, let's say, agentic workflow. So I've made this kind of LLM Chess Arena where you can put 2 models against each other. Right now, Qwen 2.5 and DeepSeek R1 are playing against each other. Now, a spoiler, LLMs are not great at playing chess, obviously. They're predicting next tokens, they don't really have any strategy. But you can like try this for yourself. All projects I'm gonna show you tonight, by the way, are fully open source. I'll show you the link at the end. You can test it out yourself. But yeah, LLMs are not great at chess, except, surprisingly, GPT 3.5 is pretty great at chess. And why? It has been trained on a lot of chess data. GPT 3.5 is actually the best. I haven't tried the new O3 model yet, but the best GPT model in chess, surprisingly better than 4 and 01. So yeah, it's just interesting to think about how do we evaluate these models, and are there other ways than just these fancy scores that we can use. Now, what else is possible with open source models? Maybe some of you who here has heard about the Google's Notebook LM, where it was like a fancy podcast. So this week I've actually made something similar. I still have to work on the front end, but I made it in Jupyter Notebooks.
This is the best one.
Yeah, the best front end indeed. I'm gonna spare you maybe the boring stuff. This is all basically prompting. I use different models. For example, here I use a fine-tune from one of our users, who fine-tuned Qwen 2.5 on more specifically role-playing. So that who here is familiar with fine-tuning? To briefly explain it, very simple. It's basically where we take a large language model and try to specify it in a more specific data set. For example, to give an easy example, if I wanted to learn it to play Pokemon, I would train it on a data set of ways of completed Pokemon games, and then it would know how to play Pokemon, for example. So this user made an RP/story writing specialist model, and I use that to create my podcast script. And then I actually also I was looking for like an easy model for people that don't have great GPUs to run a TTS model, and I used Hexgray Kokoro. It's only 82 million parameters. I don't know if any of you use it, because I also was looking for something that didn't sound too robotic, like a lot of sound like Google Translate, right? The smaller you get, and that's not really nice. And then I actually made a podcast on this PDF. It's a very basic PDF for this example. It's just an intro to data science, let's say. And then the result is this.
Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of our podcast. We're diving deep into the world of data and exploring how it powers the incredible language models we use every day. From Shakespeare's plays to Reddit threads and scientific papers, these vast oceans of data are the bedrock of modern AI. Today...
Don't worry, I'm not gonna let you listen to the whole 11-minute thing. Now, you might be wondering what is like the most prominent use case for these fine-tuned models. Why don't people just use GPT for everything? What we've noticed at Featherless is that I would say over 50% of these fine-tuned models are getting used for actually role play. I don't know who here is familiar with character AI. So character AI is basically a ChatGPT, but you can speak with characters. And at Featherless, we've made the same called Wyvern Chat, where you can talk to different characters. Let's talk with maybe Jay Stellis of the famous Netflix show Arcane. And this in the background basically uses an open model to simulate a conversation. Basically, it's all fancy prompting, and with a fine-tuned model that was also a role-play model. So let's say, hello Jace, I'm at AI Tinkerers today. How are you doing? Now my boss always told me never to do live demos because they don't work with PC. And then you can talk with Jace or whatever your favorite character is.
Where are some parts green?
This is like the, how do you say it?
Dialogue and...
yeah, dialogue and, exactly. Like the dialogue and the thoughts. But, yes?
Sorry. Where do you find the training set to do this? Are these actual characters from?
We actually have a whole community of people that make these character cards. They make it themselves, they can upload it, they can make whatever cards they want. We have a team that screens them because we also have platforms like Chop and other stuff. It's a messed up world sometimes as well. But we have a team that screens all character cards, and we have also LLMs that filter character cards. This is not open source yet, by the way. We hope to open source it in the future, but it's free to use. We have some models that are free to use, and you can bring your own API key of any platform to use as well. You also had a question?
Yes. So a follow-up question is, but where is the data coming from? It's like the scripts from the show, like how are they trained?
No, basically what people do is they create a character card. Maybe I can show you one.
Because I suppose that like Jace needs to speak like Jace, right?
Yes.
And know things that Jace is supposed to do because it's like part of the like
Yeah.
world building, this kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So people
where
actually,
is this stuff coming from?
people provide all the information from, well, maybe Jace is a bad example because the new LLMs will know about Jace because it's such a famous show and it's such a famous character. But let's say you would want to make a character about you. You would just give a description of what you want to do, how you would speak. You can do this without fine-tuning even. You can do this with just prompting. And then people just fill in these character cards with his personality, examples of the dialogue. People go really extreme, depending how specific you want it. And then it will speak like Jace, or at least they will try to have it speak like Jace. But a lot of people spend like hours refining just one character. But you should try it. It's really fun. I think it's quite good.
Question about the hardware that you were talking about before. I see that you have a gaming laptop there.
Yes, this
so
is.
Do we have any hope of running any of the, let's say, most interesting models locally on like an M1 Apple Silicon?
I could say you could run like with Llama CPP and stuff like that. You can run all of the smaller models, like sub 7, maybe even 12 billion parameters on your laptop, depending on how technical you are. But no worries, because I have a present for you at the end. Okay, my PC crashed.
You're gonna throw GPUs on the crowd.
Yeah. It's funny that we're talking about GPUs, because my PC just crashed. I'm gonna restart for a second. Meanwhile, I will talk about another project I made. So there recently was also the Deep Research project by OpenAI, all famous now. Where yesterday they released it for ChatGPT Plus subscribers. But before that, it was $200 per subscription. So when you could do 100 queries with that, so that is like $2 per query. I've made an open source version as well.
Something happened with the TV?
No, it's my PC crashed.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been crashing all day today, but it's fine. I'll start it. You guys can see all the games.
Are you planning to make your previous project also available through voice?
Yes, we are actually, last week we announced our real-time voice API, similar to GPT, what GPT has, so speech-to-speech, which will also be added to Ivan Chat, so you'll be able to just speak with it and it'll instantly speak back. Okay. Yes?
Do you have any research about why people want to talk to characters, or is it like more extending into if they want to talk to the person?
That's interesting. Actually, an interesting fact is that most of the users, you would expect it to be maybe lonely men, but a lot of them are actually females. Like a large part of our crowd that are using this service are females from research we've done. So I don't know exactly the reason why or why that's happening, but I think it's just like a form of companionship people are looking for. Okay, so deep research. Let me actually restart my cursor. In the meanwhile,
Maybe interesting tidbit. I tried to run R1 full scale locally over a striped network set of 4090s, and it managed to run at like 2-3 tokens per second. It was a 1.58-bit quantized model, and I learned that if you network scale, if you stripe a very large language model over a network, your bottleneck is latency. So it is the latency between the GPUs to do the whole network. And that latency isn't very fixable, so I was a bit disappointed, but you can do that with Llama CPP in, I think, RPC mode it's called. Llama CPP RPC, it's actually very simple to run, and then you can cluster a very large model. So besides the fact that you could actually run the model, 3 tokens per second is not exactly...
And to continue on that, DeepSeek this week is releasing a lot of tips and tricks to improve inference. So for the more technical people out here, I will be sure to check that out. Okay, so deep dive, the deep research copy, open source copy. I'm actually not going to use DeepSeek R1 because I've been testing Qwen 2.5 and I think it's an underrated model. It's the competitor, it's from Alibaba, the Chinese company.
The Qwen is still DeepSeek stolen, right?
Yeah, exactly. We also, maybe I can try that one as well. DeepSeek R1 Qwen is still 32B. We have a 72B. Don't have a 72B, so I'll just use this one for now. What do I want? What are the latest Dua Lipa songs? While this runs, I will get you guys my present for all of you builders here.
What are the models running on? What is the infra?
So the inference is running on Featherless AI. We're a serverless inference provider, and I have a present for all of you. I have a month free of inference of all open models. You just have to make an account and then fill in that code, Tinkerers, and then you get a premium subscription. Please use it. I have fought hard for this before with my boss, so feel free to use it. And it's you can make unlimited calls during a whole month with this. So yeah.
To any model?
To any model.
Any model. Okay.
All models on Hugging Face, all open weight models on Hugging Face.
No limit.
No limits, but we have a concurrency limit. Okay. So you can't do like 100, but it's like, I think for like 70 B models, the premium subscription does 2 concurrencies, and for like 13 B models, it's 4 concurrencies. So you can select them.
And 600 B model?
We're currently hosting I think we have the Llama 405B one bit, but you don't have any larger ones currently, but we're planning on doing that as well.
What is the backend?
The backend, we're using VLLM.
No, like whose compute is running?
Oh, our compute.
Your compute?
Yeah, Featherless AI.
Okay, so you have little stuff in the data center.
Oh no, we're using different GPU providers depending on the market. It's not we don't have a set GPU provider. We also have some of our own servers, but depends on.
So you have an infrastructure to run open source models.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So if we don't have the hardware.
Yes, exactly. Then you can use us.
Then we can use this.
Yeah.
And is it compatible with
OpenAI?
OpenAI, Versal, like AI SDK, that kind of stuff?
First I would have to check, but we are fully OpenAI compatible. You just have to change, so I can show it here. I don't want to show too much of our product right now.
I
But
guess the Versal AI
you just have to change
is compatible to
OpenAI. Normally it should be.
API, so.
Yeah, you just have to change these 2 lines and then
Exactly.
you can use it. Let's see on the deep dive. Yeah, so then it will ask more questions and then it will do a research. I think I'm gonna round it off here to not take too much time, but if there are any more questions, feel free to ask me, and thank you for your attention.
Oh, yeah. You ask.
You can make a question.
Oh, sorry. So you asked a question in the previous form,
Yes.
right? And it was about a song.
Yeah, and then.
So this is dynamically generated by like through the model,
Yes.
like a follow-up with fields.
Yeah, it will ask follow-up questions to know more about your question or question it has, and it will then create a research report.
Oh, okay, that's very interesting. So if you have a scenario where you have, let's say, a user journey where you are branching the journey into different scenarios,
yeah, exactly.
Then you can dynamically generate the form with everything that comes with it, like validation, everything.
Kind of. Like currently, it's very basic. Like currently, it's just it asks 3 follow-up. Well, you can. I've hard coded it to only ask 3 follow-up questions, but like the code is like you can. It's online already. Maybe I can show that as well. It's all available on our Discord, fully open source here, and yeah, you can check out because it's very simple, very basic. You can probably just put it in the cursor and ask it to make the changes for you. But yeah, it should be possible. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Are you spinning up a new model?
No.
So you're like sharing?
Yes. Yeah. And for example, we now have 3,000 ALMOD models. Of course, those are not all loaded into our GPU. So we hot swap them. Like the most popular models will always be in, of course. And we might even spin up a specific GPU if we notice that model is being called. For example, for DeepSeek, or one when the DeepSeek API went down, we had like 4 GPUs permanently running DeepSeek requests, right? But for example, for these niche models, like 8 billion models that maybe one user uses, it might only be up for like a few hours and then get swapped out. Yes?
So what is the largest context window that you have in any of the models?
32K at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, because I've been playing with Google's 1 million or 2 million.
Yeah, the Flash.
And it's like, if anyone hasn't played with it and has a lot of data, I suggest you try it, because it is definitely a new angle that is kind of unknown, because you can pretty much, like, say you have a programming problem, like, hey, I want to build this, you can chuck half a code base in there. It takes a little while. 300,000 tokens takes like 15 seconds for it to load up. Doesn't always come back. I guess not many people use that large context window, but it is definitely something new to experience with AI, I found, because it's way more accurate over the context window.
Yeah, maybe to continue on that, we at Featherless have announced last week our new foundational model, I would say, a new hybrid model, which is the same concept. We have merged a linear transformer and an attention transformer, so GPT-4 or attention transformers. And with a linear transformer, in theory, that's the thing we're trying to prove right now, you would be able to have unlimited context, and that's the same thing that Google is doing right now with 1 million tokens. So more announcements will be later this week, so be sure to check that out.
All right, thank you so much, Darin.